I like to break this up into two parts. A, my dry ingredients need to be pulverized, and B, my egg whites need to be whipped up. So we're going to take our powdered sugar and almond flour and place them in the food processor. Put the lid on it, and I'm just gonna pulse it for about a minute. I already added a little pinch of salt in there. So this is a lot easier than just doing it by hand. You could actually just turn it on and walk away. It's just a convenience thing. Okay, I'm gonna lift this up, and we're going to place all of our dry ingredients back in the bowl so that they're ready for us to use. And now I gotta take care of my egg whites. So again, stand mixer makes it super easy. So I'm going to take my egg whites that have that little bit of cream of tartar in them, and I'm going to get them to soft peak stage. There are 3 stages to egg whites. When you first begin to beat them, they look really foamy and bubbly. The more air you incorporate into the egg whites, the whiter in color they're going to get. So they're going to lose their yellowish greenish tint, and they're going to start looking more pillowy and whiter. And the more air you beat into them, the stiffer and whiter they're going to look. Right around soft peak stage, and I'll show you what that looks like when we're there, you'll slowly stream in your sugar. And you want to make sure that you don't add your sugar too soon, because then it weighs down the egg whites and you'll never get the air that you want inside your macaron. The trick to a really good macaron is making sure that your egg whites stay nice and light and stiff as you're adding in your dry ingredients. And we'll talk about that more while we're folding, but ensuring that your egg whites get really stiff and get lots of lift is the secret to making it easier to combine the macaron later. So let's go ahead and get our egg whites going. I'm gonna start beating them on high until they reach soft peak stage, and then I'll stream in the vanilla sugar. Remember, it's nice to have your egg whites at room temperature. It really does help them lift up nicer. We've added our cream of tartar in there. The cream of tartar is going to keep our egg whites nice and stable and stiff, even as we start to fold in our dry ingredients. Right now, we're still at foaming stage. And I like to turn it all the way up so that the beater really gets momentum and gets all the way to the edges of the egg whites. So we're leaving foaming stage and we're entering soft peak stage now. And this is how you can tell if you're at soft peak stage. If you take your little whisk here and you kind of pick up some of your egg whites and fold them onto themselves, they form these beautiful little pillowy clouds. There we go. But they don't fall and get really soupy. So we've incorporated enough air now that it's safe to add in our granulated sugar. So I'm gonna put this on medium speed, because if I put it on high speed, the sugar's just gonna fly out of the bowl. So medium speed, and I'm gonna slowly stream in my vanilla sugar. Here we are. Now that I've got my sugar in there, I'm going to turn it all the way up and get these super stiff. And I can tell they're stiff enough when the egg whites completely pull away from the edges of the bowl. So watch pot never boils and egg whites never lift up if you watch them too long. So this would be a great time to step away and maybe put your dishes away so that you have space to do your piping and you feel like you have a nice clean open space. Kind of the advantage of using a stand mixer is you can beat the egg whites and kind of leave them alone. One little tip is that once you add sugar to egg whites, they can't really be overbeaten because the sugar will eventually liquefy and create a nice glossy glue for the egg whites. So, you know, it allows you to be flexible, walk away, and get something else done. If you take a look at these egg whites here, you start to see that they're stiffening up and they're starting to coagulate towards the center of the beater. And they're really pulling away from the edges. I'm going to show you what I'm trying to look for. So these are pretty stiff, and I'm going to test it out and show you real quickly. What I want to see is that stiff angle here, not looping over. So when I do this, do you see how this kind of came back down a little bit? What I'm looking for is something a little bit stiffer than this. This is, again, our insurance policy for not over-folding later. So I'm going to give this another 30 seconds or so that when I do this, the tip kind of stays straight up instead of folding back over. All right, so adding another 30 seconds here is really going to help us a lot, especially if you've never made macaron before. All right, so we gave these egg whites an extra 30 seconds, which really helped to stiffen them up. Do you see how much more they're pulling away from the sides of the bowl and how much they're coagulating in the center of the beater? This is what you're looking for. So I'm going to take this little thing here. See how nice and stiff they got? They're solid now. There's not sort of any moisture left over and there's not any movement. And now you can take this bowl here and test them out by doing this. They're nice and stiff. And we are ready to put everything together. We've cleared our space. It's time to incorporate the dry ingredients into the egg whites. Before we do that, let's really quickly talk about posture, because anytime you're in the kitchen making the same repetitive movement, you want to make sure you have good posture so you don't get too tired. So in a commercial kitchen, we always tell people to stand with your feet shoulder width apart and to really kind of relax. Your center is here. If you've ever taken a dance class, that's where it's at. And to make sure that you have your power come from the back of your shoulder, whether you're a lefty or a righty. When you are right-handed, you want to make sure you're going clockwise with your movement, and left-handers go counterclockwise. And always manipulate your bowl instead of your body. So I don't want to see you guys reaching like this. Just kind of tilt the bowl, make it work for you, and fold this way. And I'll teach you how to fold in a second. To start with, we're using a spatula. Again, whatever you have in your kitchen is what you should use, but when you're using a spatula, be sure that you're just using this. We don't want to flatten the egg whites and deflate them, so we're really just scraping and cleaning the bowl and flipping and scraping and flipping. And the way we do that is we tilt the bowl and really kind of scrape it and go for it. So let's do this. So when I'm taking the egg whites out of the bowl, I'm scraping them in one big swoop. If I do this a lot and try and really get them out of there, it's going to deflate the egg whites. So I want to be super efficient. Scrape them and flip them out. Scrape, get them out. Scrape, and get them out. So I've got my egg whites here now. I'm going to bring my dry ingredients over and grab my sifter here, and I'm going to incorporate the dry ingredients over the egg whites in 3 stages. So let me start with the first third. I'm just going to take about a third of my dry ingredients here. There we are, and just sift them. Doop, doop, doop. And the reason I'm sifting it over this is because I don't want to put anything heavy directly over the egg whites, so sifting it makes it sort of more delicate. And I'm getting all these little granules here. Again, remember, these are very delicate cookies, and having all these little spots of almond flour, even if you've processed them in the food processor, makes it a more delicate cookie. So this stuff, I'm not going to incorporate into the batter. All right, now it's time to fold. So I'm going to take my spatula and I'm going to hold it as close to the head of the spatula as possible. If I hold it up here, I'm not going to have a lot of control. So when you're holding a utensil, be sure to really give it all you got. So I'm going to take my spatula, and because I'm right-handed, I'm going to move from noon to 8 p.m. So I'm going to start at the top here, scrape and flip. And I'm going to cut halfway through. And cutting halfway through really helps to get the stuff at the bottom. Here's what I don't want to see you do at home. Don't get really cautious and scared and just go around the edges. You really want to reach right down in there and flip. And reach and flip and cut halfway through. Reach and flip. Reach and flip and cut halfway through. And at first, it's going to look really weird and like it's not working. Don't worry about it. And I also don't want you to do this. Don't do this and then push down. This really deflates the egg whites. So we're just going to scrape and flip. And before it looks too pretty, we're going to add our next third. Add about half of what's left in here. Again, sifting. And again, we're sifting because we don't want to put anything heavy on these egg whites and cause them to deflate. So sifting helps to disperse these dry ingredients over the egg whites in really light, powdery snow. Baking is really more about technique than exact, precise measurements. When I'm making biscuits, I remember this all the time. If I'm off by a tablespoon or 2 of flour, not a big deal as long as my butter is really cold. But if I measure everything perfectly and use warm butter, I'm not going to have flaky biscuits. The same is true here. I really want you to focus on this folding technique because that's the most important part of what you're doing today. All right, see? Scrape and flip. I'm really sort of scraping down here as well to get all those dry ingredients to be absorbed by the egg whites. All right? So now that we've absorbed our second set of dry ingredients, I'm going to add the rest. And now we're going to keep folding. This is not the time to be shy. I really want you to work on this folding technique because you're going to use it a lot in baking. Also, these ingredients can smell your fear, so act like you know. So we're really going to fold now, and what I want to do is be able to test for what's called a ribbon. And a ribbon is when you pick up about half of this batter and move it back and forth as it falls, and you'll see a pretty ribbon forming as it falls. I'll show you when it's not ready. Take a look at this. If I pick up half of my batter here and I slowly kind of move it back and forth, this is not a pretty ribbon. It's kind of thick and gloppy. So what I want to do is to really just kind of go for it here. And you'll see it's going to take, no more than a few folds. Now be careful of recipes, or be mindful of recipes that call for exactly 72 folds to get to the macaron stage, because their spatula might be half the size of yours. So I really want you to focus on what it's supposed to look like rather than the exact precise number of folds that it takes. So take a look at this. After just a few extra folds, it's starting to look more liquefied. Do you see that ribbon there? Okay, now let's take it a little bit further. It was still rather thick. So we're at the stage here where we're almost there. Take a look at this ribbon. It still feels a little bit thick. If I pipe these right now, I'm going to get a little hat at the top of the cookie, which is fine. We'll get a nice foot, but what happens when you nest them parallel to each other in a little box is if it has a little pointy hat, it's going to crush the cookie next to it, poke a little hole in it. So we want to make sure our cookies are nice and flat. So if I pipe these right now, they'll have a little hat on there, but I want a nice flat one. So I'm going to keep folding just a little bit more. If I fold too much, I won't get a foot on the cookie. So I'm going to show you what it's supposed to look like. In just a couple folds, we'll be there. All right, let's see this ribbon here. That looks really nice and smooth. I'm going to give it a couple more folds. All right, take a look at this. Do you see the smoothness of this ribbon? It's not quite liquidy. It still has a little bit of tension in it, and it's just perfect. So I'm going to get my piping bag ready and show you how to pipe these cookies. We'll let them dry, and then we'll bake them. Here we go. Again, I love these cookie sheets. They're my favorite. Here's how you fill the piping bag. I want you to hold it like this. If you're left-handed, hold it in your right hand. If you're right-handed, hold it like this, kind of like holding a funnel in your left hand. You're going to take some batter here and get it in the bag. All right, here we are. So now we're ready to pipe. I don't want you to use the crayon hold when you're holding your pastry bag. I want you to clamp it here and squeeze from here. So what you want to do is to hold your tip just above the paper. Place it right here, squeeze, staying at the same spot, and then opening up your hand and then lifting. If you squeeze from up here, you get a big pile of doo-doo. If you place your tip on the paper, it comes out real misshapen. So really, you want your tip to be at the same height as the cookie, which is really thin. So go ahead and place your tip right there, squeeze, open your hand, and then pull up. If you squeeze and then keep squeezing as you pull up, you get this bit here. See how much more batter there is in there? When we try and bake this off, this part will stay really raw, and the cookie will be very difficult to peel off the paper. So again, you hold your piping bag here, you squeeze, open your hand, and then pull up. Squeeze, open your hand, pull up. Squeeze, open your hand, and pull up. You want all the macarons to be at least this far apart on the cookie sheet, and you want them to be all about the same size, because when we bake these off, this guy here is going to be underbaked and these will be overbaked. So you want them all to be about the same size, which is why I like this technique. If you hold your bag like this, like a machine, and just count 1, 2, 3, open your hand, pull up, you'll end up having the same size cookie over and over again on the cookie sheet. Let me show you how to make hearts, because as long as the circumference of the heart is about the same size as the circles, then you should be all right to put them on the same cookie sheet. I start here, I squeeze, and then I release the pressure as I pull. And then I squeeze and release pressure as I pull, just having those two meet up. Remember to make an even number, because these are sandwich cookies. There we go. You can also make a teddy bear like that. Squeeze, and then just make 2 little dots like this. Oh, I love doing Easter bunnies. Let me show you. This is really cute. So you do this. I'm going to make a second one. So I make sure I have enough batter because I'm getting down to the end. And just squeeze some little ears like that. I'm going to pipe a couple tiny little tails here. So I'm going to let these dry for about 40 minutes, and then I'm going to turn my oven on to 350 degrees, maybe 325 if I'm using convection, and then we'll bake them off. We'll make buttercream and fill them.